Hey everyone, this is Terrence here with the Kingdom Truth and Power podcast, and today I'm just going to go right into what it is that I need to talk about today. This is going to be more of a informal episode. I'm not going to bother with an intro music, outro music, or anything like that. Um, there's just been some things that, on a personal side, have been bothering me recently, and I kind of want to talk about that and what I found to be the solution for what I'm dealing with, and really the reason why I'm doing this episode is to not only get this off of me, but in hopes that for anyone else that is out there dealing with the same thing, going through the same thing, or knows what it feels like, that you're not alone, and maybe even perhaps what I'm able to share with you, what will help you, presently, or maybe sometime down the road, if you ever happen to come across the same situation or circumstance, and deal with it, in your own personal life. But I'm not really sure where to start or where to go, how this is going to go. I could possibly be all over the place, but hopefully, I trust that God will bring it all together. So I don't have any particular, a specific topic. I don't have any points or principles or anything like that to share. It's just really, I guess you can say, it's more of a confession of what I've been dealing with here recently, and what I believe to be, again, the solution for for what's been going on. And so, if for those who don't know, I work in information technology, or IT, as a network engineer. I'm one of the senior network engineers, excuse me, for the company in which I'm employed with. And it's a very great company. The opportunity is excellent, things like that. But as of recently, I've kind of gotten a bit discouraged with my field and what it is that I do as a profession. And it got me to a place to where, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. I don't want to work in IT. I don't want to do anything, or deal with anything professionally, that is related to IT. I just kind of, had a moment in which I just got discouraged, and it made me question whether or not I have made the right career choice. If this was something that I should have gotten into, because growing up, I never really had a desire to do networking or anything IT related. It just wasn't anything that I was just naturally or inherently interested in. How I got into it was that I really had no plans coming out of high school. I didn't go to college. I was set to go into the military, but decided not to. And so I had no real direction, no real guidance as to what to even do with my life. And my mother ended up putting in a word for me with the company that she was working with at the time. And I got hired, which was on a help desk doing dial up internet support for customers of WorldCom, which was a really large ISP in the early 2000s. I was saying like the 90s, early 2000s. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door with IT. And so it got me, my feet wet a little bit. And I was doing that job for about 2 years, 9 months. And then we got laid off because WorldCom went bankrupt. The company lost the contract. and they had to lay everyone off. So there was a point in time where I was just like, well, what do I do now? I'm at this crossroads and I'm not exactly sure what to do. At this time, it's about 2003 when I got laid off. I had, I'm new in Christ, just got into, quote unquote church, and the only real direction I got at the time was from my pastor, which was saying, who said that I should, go back to school. She said I seemed to be a pretty intelligent person, but even with that, there was really no direction as to what do I do? What do I go back to school for? So it was just kind of just like left in my hands to make that decision, and I didn't know, or even maybe I never really even thought about, praying and asking God, what do I do? What do I what do I go back to school for? What do I study? So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I've been introduced to IT. I was doing, tech support for this company. Maybe I should just stick with that. And go to school for a network administration position, which is what I did. And so I kind of been, I kind of stuck with it. And that's how I got into IT. And throughout the years, I've learned and I've grown, and I've educated myself both formally as well as self education in order to learn the things that I needed to learn. And there were some high moments and there were some low moments, in which what I've been dealing with recently isn't really new. It's been something that has come up, a few times throughout my life and throughout my professional career. And, I just questioned whether or not I wanted to do this. Now, in the past, that question could have been because I was mainly dissatisfied with the kind of work that I was doing because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do professionally, which was getting into like pure, core networking, the routing, the switching, stuff like that. Making communications between systems work. I didn't want to do help desk type work anymore. I didn't want to do desktop support and that kind of stuff. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And especially after getting my associate's degree in network administration, I really wanted to do that. So that prompted me to go back and obtain my bachelor's degree, things like that, and a lot of doors opened up, since then. But recently, I was just sitting in some meetings at work, and I was just thinking to myself, is this something that I really want to do? And I think the meetings that I was sitting in on, really contributed to that, because they were, in my opinion, they were meetings that I felt were unnecessary, and for a later time, because there were, things that we have not yet implemented that could impact this particular meeting. And so we don't, I was thinking to myself, well, with this particular phase, we haven't even, going through, the first phase. We don't know how that's going to work, or if that's going to, meet our expectations. And if there's any tweaking or changes that need to be done in order to make that work, then that may affect phase two, for which we're having this meeting and things like that. And I think a lot of that just started to get to me, and, really caused me to question, whether I really want to be in this field. IT, regardless of what branch or path of IT that you're working in, the field changes so quickly and so rapidly. It can get very difficult to keep up and easy to get left behind in this, especially if you're not doing certain things on a daily basis, or at least on a consistent basis. And so it was just last week, I was just like, do I really want to do this? And I got really discouraged, and not really sure if this is something that I want to stay in. And then my mind starts going all over the place, trying to figure out, if I don't stay in this field, what else am I going to do? Am I going to go back to school? things like that, right? And so, today was probably at least the the first part of the day, mainly all morning, and I would say a good half of the afternoon, where I was just like, you know, I was borderline depressed, deeply discouraged, uh, just not really feeling much of anything. And for those who don't know, I'm also a huge San Francisco 49ers football team fan, in which I've been a fan of the 49ers since '89. And then losing that game last night, although I didn't have any real expectations or anything like that, it's still disappointing to see your team make it that far, and then lose in the way that they did. I believe that added on to it, even though, again, like I said, I didn't really have any, expectations, but I guess you can say I still had something there because, I'm facing the disappointment, right? So, I'm, a little sad, disappointed about, last night's game, and then, on top of, the whole work thing and whatnot. And so, I was talking to God or earlier today, and I was just like, just kind of, I guess, letting him know what was bothering me and what I didn't want, and things like that. And one of the things that I was saying was, you know, I don't want to. Well, you know what? I'm probably getting ahead of myself. So let me say this. So that's pretty much my confession, right? You know, the feelings of depression and discouragement, as it relates to work and allowing it to, get me down and bring me down. Um, but I would say just a little bit ago, I was showering, and in the shower, I happened to think about a message that Bill Johnson preached, called Keys to Emotional and Mental Health. And I believe this was a message that he released maybe sometime last year or something like that. As we were dealing, we still are dealing with the whole coronavirus pandemic. But it was a message that he released, and I believe one of the passages that he mentioned was in First Thessalonians 5:18, which probably was like the key verse that he was coming from, where it says, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. And it was at that moment when I thought about the message and what the scripture said, it kind of made me feel like, okay, you know what? Maybe I, some way, somehow, I move from a place or a state of thankfulness and gratefulness, to a place of unthankfulness and ungratefulness. And that opened up this door for discouragement and depression to come in and try to settle in on me, to further get me down, further get me discouraged, so that I don't perform well on my job, so that I walk around the house, releasing this negative energy and this demonic spirit, on not only myself but also on my family and my home, and cause a disruption, right? So, I thought about it, and I was just like, man, I was, thinking to myself, I was like, one of the things that I don't want to do is I don't want to lose this opportunity that I have here, right? I don't want to lose this opportunity with my current position by either underperforming or performing so horribly that they let me go, or I make an emotional decision and quit or try to find another job that, you know, wasn't what God's intention for me, is or anything like that, and then later on regret having something that was truly a blessing. You know what I'm saying? So I guess in other words is that I don't want to, you know, have something taken away from me or give up something only to have feelings of regret and wishing that I would have appreciated what I had. And now that it's gone, I have to kind of work my way back into a situation that that's going to be best not only for myself but also for my family, you know. And I think that for me kind of turned things around where, I had to tell God, God, I'm grateful again. I'm grateful again because I don't want to lose out on what it is that you have, given me, or the door that you have opened up for me, simply because I had a moment of discouragement or feelings of discouragement about what's going on, professionally with me. And so I think, you know, that is a key, that thankfulness and gratefulness is the key to restoring even joy, in our hearts. Um, because when we're thankful, we can look at, where we are, and look back at where God has brought us, from, and what He has brought us through to where we are now. Because even in my moment of discouragement, I even thought about, going back as far as my childhood, and I even got a little upset with my parents, with my mom and my dad, even though they weren't together when I was a child, but just maybe the impact that they had on me. And I was just like, why didn't they try to navigate me, through life, um, regarding the things that I may have been interested in or things that I may have been good in, to try to help me develop that, and and set me up for for what I'm going to have to deal with, in life, in real life, and I was started asking those questions, and I'm just like, geez, like, come on, and again, your parents only, they only know what to do that either they've been exposed to or that they know to do. You can't fault somebody for not knowing something, and I try not to use that as an excuse, because like I'm the type of person where if I felt like I should have had something that I didn't get in my childhood or growing up, especially something that's going to help later on in life, help my children later on in life, I'm the type of person where I'm just like, I want to make sure that this doesn't happen to them, or that they don't experience this, and try to set them up for something better, and so that bothered me a little bit, and it just made me feel like, I didn't have um maybe worth or value. I felt like a empty vessel or an empty canvas. Nothing that was, and again, this is this is the trick of discouragement and depression. Um, but it makes you feel that way, even when you know that God had revealed or spoke things, to you to reveal, what it is that He has put in you. But it tries to make you feel that way. And so, I thought about that. I even thought about, financially, this field, being a network engineer and working in IT has afforded me, and my family, to be able to live a certain lifestyle. And although we're not, financially rich, uh, according to, you know, American society, but I know to other cultures, other countries, things like that, I would be considered rich. But this profession has allowed us to live a certain lifestyle in which, if we need to do something, we don't have to go into debt to do it. And although, we do have some debt, student loans and a mortgage, you know, God has saw fit to provide for us in a way in which, we are working on a financial plan to get rid of that debt in a certain number of years, much sooner than it would take to pay off if we just, stuck with the original loan term, and so looking at it from a monetary standpoint, you know, financially, it goes to show that regardless of how much money you have, if you feel empty inside, or if you feel that you don't have any kind of fulfillment in life, or anything like that, it doesn't matter how much money you have. And that saying is true. Money cannot buy happiness. It buys momentary satisfaction, which is temporary, but it's nothing that endures, or that is long lasting. you know. And so I just think that for anybody that's dealing with this kind of thing, especially here in the United States, we're in this system with this economic system that is built on the backs of workers, employees, or laborers. It gets to be a real burden because you're part of this rat race and you're trying to get off the wheel. And in the process of trying to get off the wheel, you face these moments of discouragement, weariness, frustration, irritation along the way. And it can really get you down. It can really get you down. And so for me, I feel that the solution or the way to combat that is to simply be thankful and grateful to God for where you are and what you do have, because things can always be worse. Yes, they can be better depending on how a person defines better or what they think better is. But God always has better in store for us. But at the same time, things could also be worse. They could be much worse. You know what I'm saying? And it's in that where, I have to think back over my life, see where I was, a person or a young man, adult who had no direction in life, no real goals or dreams, and how God took that and brought me to where I am today. For someone who started out that way, and I look at where I am now, I would have to say that's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good. And there are a lot of people out there that are like have been in the same situation as me. No guidance, no navigation, or anyone to really tell them, what they're good at, or how to help them with whatever their interests are, and to help them navigate their way through life. But yet, God steps in and he turns their whole situation and their life around to where they are in a position and a place in life that they have never dreamed, or that they never thought that they would have been in. And so, I utter these words again: God, I'm grateful again. God, I am grateful again. And I can say that with my heart and with meaning and intent, because I am. And because of that, it has restored my joy, in what I do. And whatever God has next for me, whatever God has next for you, he's going to bring it about in his timing. And I think one of the hardest things for us to do, especially if we're believers in Christ, is to wait on God and try not to make things happen on our own. And so that's what I plan to do. I plan to, to wait on God as best as I can and as best as I know how. And, when he's ready to open up, the next door, you know, I pray that I'll be ready to step through it. And so, you know, I just wanted to share this. Um, I hope that you take something from it. Again, there's nothing specific or particular that I wanted to bring out to you. No real lesson, or I shouldn't say no real lesson, but no real topic or anything like that. And I guess whatever lesson uh, you take from it, or whatever it is that maybe God has highlighted to you, or whatever stuck out to you most, maybe that's the lesson for you. So, with that said, I'm going to wrap up this episode. I want to thank all of those who clicked on it to listen and to really, hear me out on this, because I think this is something that affects a lot of people. You know, one of the things that causes people to quit and resign on their jobs is a dissatisfaction. And sometimes I think we make the wrong mistake because we feel dissatisfied on the job and we think that maybe this isn't the career for me. But I think that if we develop and cultivate a lifestyle of thankfulness and being grateful to the Lord, that He'll restore our joy in what it is that we do, and it'll give us the strength that we need in order to keep on. And then God will some way somehow open up the next door for us to step through, and we'll be glad that we maintain that attitude of gratefulness and thankfulness. And so, God bless you. Thank you. I love you guys. And until the next episode, this is Terrence with the I'm going to say Kingdom Culture Podcast. That was the old name of the show. But with the Kingdom Truth and Power Podcast, I'll see you in the next episode.